determine neutralizing antibodies, cytokines, look at the T-cell responses, immunophenotyping, and also transcriptomics to see what's really going on inside these cells. There's still a lot of work ongoing, but for today I would like to talk about the antibodies. And I would like... So, the heritage study took place in the Greater Accra region. We included 301 adults from 4 different locations where they got the vaccine. So at Dabraka Polyclinic, Greater Accra Regional Hospital, Kolebu, and University of Ghana Hospital. And so 7 time points. So in total we collected over 15,000 samples. So the samples we collected were mainly oropharyngeal swabs to look for COVID-19 positivity and blood samples to do the full immune investigations. So you can imagine that is a lot of data that you generate with so many time points. Participants were also followed up in between to ask them how they were doing, COVID-19 symptoms. So we have managed all this data in Uvosio. Uvosio is the data management system developed by Yamachi, where we can manage all this data in a structured way, pull it out easily so we can do our analysis. So the demographics of our participants. So we had 301 participants, around 60% of them male, most participants quite young, half of them between 20 and 29 years old. We asked them whether it's COVID-19 symptoms at baseline, and around 25% reported 1 or more COVID-19 symptoms. We asked for comorbidities, autoimmune disease, and as I mentioned, so 45% got AstraZeneca and 55% got the Pfizer vaccine. Yeah, so one of the first things we checked was COVID-19 positivity during the course of the study. So this was done by RT-PCR. And as you can see, at baseline, around 20% of the participants were positive for COVID-19. This 20% was roughly maintained for the first 3 weeks. And after that, we saw a decline in COVID-19 positivity, which I think is a very good thing you want to see when you do a vaccine study. So when we then look at how does our data compare to the situation here in Ghana, so these orange bars is COVID-19 positivity in the heritage study. So, and then in blue is the new cases in Ghana, and in red is the new deaths in Ghana due to COVID-19. And you can see that actually our data quite nicely follows the national trends here in Ghana. Maybe also good to notice this pink line is the people vaccinated, and our study started December 2021 when vaccination in Ghana was still very low. So when we compare our trends with the global trends for COVID-19 cases and deaths, there's not so much correlation, especially not for this last week. So yeah, so one of the first analysis we did was to see, okay, if you do a proper modeling, do we indeed see that when you get a vaccine, the chances of being positive for COVID-19 reduce? And that is indeed what you can see, that in the first 2 weeks, participants are more likely to be COVID-19 positive, and after that, less likely to have COVID-19. And we also looked at other factors that might be associated with COVID-19 positivity at baseline. And a few of the factors that came out were those who had formal employment with the higher odds of being COVID-19 positive, those with comorbidities, and those with COVID-19 symptoms. I think that one might not be a very surprising finding, but I think it shows that the data is reliable. And we also saw that those with autoimmune disease, here have a reduced likeliness of being COVID-19 positivity. positive, and that might feel a bit counterintuitive, but what we think is, and there's also literature supporting that those who know they are vulnerable, they adhere better to all the measures like wearing of nose mask, washing of hands, and that they better protect themselves. So now I would like to take you to the serological analysis. Yeah, so I would like to thank the previous speaker for introducing neutralizing antibody titers, the spike protein, all of that already, because as Dr. Kwashi mentioned, we are doing similar things. So the first thing we did was to look at antibodies against the spike protein and against nucleocapsids. And what you can notice at baseline, there are already quite high antibody titers for both anti-spike and anti-nucleocapsids. Especially anti-nucleocapsids, it indicates there was high previous exposure, natural exposure to SARS-CoV-2 in this cohort. And keep in mind, this cohort started December 2021, so COVID had already been around for some time. I also want to draw your attention to this group. These are like 45 participants who were anti-nucleocapsid negative at baseline, so they're most likely SARS-CoV-2 naive. So then when we look at our neutralizing antibody titers, also using a live virus neutralization assay, and thanks again to the first speaker for explaining that in depth. So what we see here is that basically for all the variants at baseline, the participants already had quite high titers, and they were even further boosted upon vaccination, and then over the 12-month period remained quite stable. And then we wanted to go a bit more into this, see how does natural exposure also affect this. So we divided a population into those who were anti-nucleocapsid negative, so previously not exposed, SARS-CoV-2 naive, and those who were previously exposed. And then we just look at the median antibody titers for different subsets. So the solid line are those who were SARS-CoV-2 naive, and you can see they start off with much lower titers as those who had previous exposure. And then they see the result of the vaccine, they get boosted, and they maintain their antibody titers over the 12-month period. Those who had already previous exposure, they started, of course, higher, and they also benefit from the vaccine because their titers are boosted even higher, and then they slow, mild waning for most of them, but still remain often higher than those who were previously naive. Except for one exception, which was Omicron. And here you can see that those that previously exposed, they start high, the titers get boosted, and they remain stable. And for those that were SARS-CoV-2 naive, they get a boost from the vaccine, and then they go up to similar levels as those who already had previous exposure. And so this study was mainly in 2022, starting end of 2021. So Omicron was also the most prevalent strain during the time to study. So what we think that we see here is a very nice example of hybrid immunization, where we have the combination of natural exposure and vaccination, which we know that together gives even a better immune response than any of them separately. So what we also did in the legacy study is our study is designed in a parallel design to the legacy study in the UK, and this enables us to compare both studies and see if there are geographical differences in the vaccine response. It should be good to keep in mind that legacy did start around a year earlier than heritage. So the variants that were going around during the legacy first year were different variants than going around during heritage. And I think one of the first things you will notice is that basically for all variants at all time points, the neutralizing antibody titers in the UK in the legacy study are lower than in the heritage study. and especially for Delta and Omicron at baseline and legacy. So this was January 2021. Those variants are not around yet, and we also see that the legacy participants do not have neutralizing antibodies against them at baseline. So we were then very curious to see how does the legacy data from the UK now compare to our different subsets based on their previous exposure. Yes. So we have again the same graph. So here those heritage previously exposed, solid line heritage previously naive, and then the small dashed line is the legacy data. And we find it quite interesting to see that legacy and those in Ghana that were not previously exposed to SARS-CoV-2, they seem to show, in general, like similar trends. They start off low and then they plateau at a certain level, except again for Omicron BA2, where we see it in legacy. And remember, legacy, this was still in 2021, so Omicron had not much arrived yet. So legacy plateaued, and whereas in our heritage study, we see that both, because natural hybrid immunity, they get higher titers. So I think that, in summary, we can show several things. We see that in the previously exposed, in a population of high previous exposure, giving the vaccine still boosts the immune response. We also see that hybrid immunity, a combination of previous exposure and vaccination, even further boosts the immune response. And we have a study in a parallel design to another study in the UK. So it also enables us to look at, to compare the vaccine response in different geographic locations to see, look for molecular cellular mechanisms underlying differences. So our future work will focus on looking at the cellular immune response to the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine in the legacy studies among the Ghanaian vaccinees and compare those to the UK vaccinees. We want to do ex vivo immunophenotyping, transcriptomic profiling, and also single-cell sequencing to look for specific T-cell and B-cell clones that are relevant. And we also want to go and look at how the host genetic diversity affects innate immune response. Furthermore, we are part of the WWC consortium, which consists of 3 studies. So the heritage study here in Ghana with Yamachi and Wakbib, the legacy study in the UK with the Francis Crick, London School of Hygiene and Medicine, and University College London Hospital, and the Windfall study with the University of the West Indies, which will allow us to do even more comparisons between different geographic locations. And then I would like to thank, first of all, the participants in the heritage study, everyone at Yamachi, Wakbib, the Francis Crick Institute who have been involved in this work, the Ghana Health Service, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for sponsoring this study. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alicia. Any questions for Alicia? Charles.
I was just wondering, with the sero response that you saw comparing spike and the classic sort of proteins, I just realized that you didn't see much in the nucleoclassic, right? But did you do some sort of like a subgroup analysis in certain age group to see whether you have some responses in certain age groups?
For age groups? No, we have not done that. We have just looked at the total of participants.
It will be interesting to see how the age groups fare in terms of the responses.
We are vaccinating adults, right?
Yeah, they're all adults. Everyone is 18 and above.
Yeah, so you could do maybe the younger age groups, and then maybe middle age, and then those who are a bit older. It's just to see how, because immunity is sort of associated with age. But also a follow-up question would be, when you follow up the participant, did you also look at that? I think your listing was the end outcome was primary. Was it seropositivity or PCR positivity?
The COVID-19 positivity is by PCR.
By PCR, okay.
Professor Masi. Oh, I thought you had a question. Okay, so let me. Okay, so let's give another round of applause. So we've managed to catch up, and I think a little bit early on time again. These are the three sort of basic science presentations we wanted to give to show a flavor of what we're doing here in terms of the antigens that we think are a little bit close and have the potential to be developed for the clinic. And then you see that the work presented by Irene and Alicia have sort of overlaps and feed off each other. Irene's is more related to the natural infection and the impact of vaccination. And the outcome of that project would, like I mentioned, would be the monoclonals that would try and test and use as reagents, and also potentially see the effects as reagents or therapeutics, or whether they have functionality in diagnostics. And then the vaccine response study will sort of bridge that and build on that. So we thought it would be good to showcase Yamachi, since we are collaborating on that study as well. What, I'm not sure if he managed to come here, what we wanted to close this out before the general discussion would be to have a presentation by the regulator. But I understand that Dr. Nkansa just arrived in the country last night and has not been able to make it here. So I think we will take our lunch and then come back here for the general discussion, which will involve our pharma partners, DEK, Atlantic Life Sciences, Yamachi, and some of the speakers. So the lunch for the invited guests will be on the first floor of the biochemistry building, and then for everyone else on the second floor. So let's try and be back here by 1 o'clock for the general discussion, and then we close out after that. Unless if there's any questions. So we'll come back here after lunch. At 1 o'clock. And we'll take attendance. Okay. I believe we are mostly back now. We'll just wait for the high table to come inside and then we'll continue. Yeah. So for this next phase, I'd like to invite representatives from DEK Vaccines, Mr. Farhan, to the podium, along with the representative from Atlantic Life Sciences, and then Yamachi Biotech. So we'll give a few minutes to present your company, and we'll discuss a little bit about the work that we've done here, that we've shown here, and where we think we are, what are the positives, and how is it that we can facilitate more academic industrial partnerships, and where are we going in terms of vaccine R&D in Ghana from some of the ideas that you've seen here. So I'll start from my right, going to the left. And I believe, Fan, you have a video to show us? Okay. So they have the video? And I'd like everyone to fully introduce themselves first before we go on. Switch it on. I think they have to give you power. Can you power the mics? Try again. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Farhan Ahmed Khan. I am the project manager for DEK Vaccines Limited. DEK Vaccines Limited, almost all of us know that DEK is the upcoming vaccine manufacturing factory in Accra, Ghana. Before I go ahead, I have a small video of the company, so I want to show so that we have a fair idea of the company and then we move ahead from there. So am I allowed? So please play the video which I have given you, IT team. So the groundbreaking happened in last year,
Located
April
in Accra,
2023.
Ghana. We're thankful to Almighty that COVID-19 pandemic is over. World has learned many lessons from COVID-19 pandemic.
Vaccine nationalism that was played out by the developed world with the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines meant that we had to take urgent, critical steps towards making sure that never again would we be victims.
It was an eye-opener to African leaders, where His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, the President of Ghana, expressed his vision that Africans cannot depend more on imported vaccines. There must be an African solution for an African problem. DEK is rapidly completing the civil construction because of His Excellency vision and initiative to set up Presidential Vaccines Manufacturing Committee, who developed the business plan for vaccines manufacturing in Ghana. Once proven that Ghana is the most appropriate country in West Africa to have vaccines manufacturing factory, VMC invited private sector to join hands to build the mega project to manufacture vaccines in Ghana. DEK Vaccines Limited was officially selected to lead the vaccines manufacturing in Ghana. Kina Pharma Limited, the only shareholder of DEK Vaccines Limited, stepped ahead to make His Excellency the President of Ghana vision into reality. Dr. Kofi Nsiapoku, the chairman of the Kina Group Limited and managing director of DEK, stands strong to have the pride of developing DEK Vaccines Limited to develop the health security in Africa. DEK Vaccines Limited is a $175 million investment to manufacture 600 million doses of various vaccines annually. Government of Ghana had passed the National Vaccines Institute law in the Constitution of Ghana. This has exhibited a lot of confidence in investors and shown the practical approach of leaders to Ghana to save African children from infectious diseases. Government of Ghana fully support DEK Vaccines Limited by issuing an off-take guarantee to procure the vaccines from DEK once DEK start manufacturing vaccines of WHO quality standards. FDA Ghana registered first ever art in Africa. It is also an example of long and productive public support to the private sector. DEK, upon completion, is ready to manufacture malaria vaccine, oral cholera vaccine, hexavalent vaccine, HPV vaccine, typhoid vaccine, pneumococcal vaccine, rotavirus vaccine, hepatitis B vaccine, yellow fever vaccine, BCG vaccine, vaccines on Chadoc's platform, measles rubella vaccine, meningococcal vaccine. Tech transfer of OCV to DEK is aimed at increasing global vaccine production capacity by 90 million vaccine doses of oral cholera vaccine under tech transfer from EU biologics per annum and reducing disparities in vaccine access for African children. DEK tech transfer for oral cholera vaccine and other vaccines will add 600 million doses of vaccines in global vaccine production and supplies. DEK 600 million doses per annum production capacity is a strong step towards health security of Africans and preparedness for the next pandemic. DEK Vaccines Limited, made in Africa, for Africa.
Thank you very much. Vaccines are basically, vaccines have saved a lot of lives of human beings. Without vaccines, number one, the health security is vulnerable, and this was basically come down to the mind of African leaders, and they realized during COVID that we should have a vaccine manufacturing factory. DK, the building you have seen under construction is almost complete now. The first building is complete and we are going to produce vaccines in 2026. 2025 we are installing the machines, and 2026 we will be doing the validation. After doing validation, then in 27 we will go hopefully toward the registration with NRA, which is FDA Ghana. So we are on the track, and initially we will be launching maybe like 2 or 3 vaccines. You have seen the list of vaccines that cannot be possible to be launched in 1 year. So this is a vaccine portfolio which maybe you'll seeing in next 10 years in DEK once it is started producing. So the objective of today's discussion was like, okay, to basically give you a fair idea where DEK is standing, as well as what is the vision of DEK. Now, all the time, what people are looking into that, okay, fill and finish. Fill and finish is not a sustainable business model in vaccine manufacturing. You should have your own IP, and you should have the drug substance manufacturing with collaboration with some of the companies. So DEK has worked a lot. There are basically discussions, lab to industry, lab to clinical, and to industry. So we are ready to support lab to clinical and clinical to industry. That is why I was basically asking Dr. Yao that, okay, how much we are ready, like if today the funds are available, are we ready to start the clinical trial? This is a very big question. So because this is where we are now coming in, and we want, whatever the gaps there are, we have to identify what antigens are available and what are the advancement in antigens are happening. Like there's a very good advancement, and there's a very good discussion we are having on a conjugation, and I always say that, okay, we should focus on conjugate vaccines, because if you see the new vaccine development in Europe and US and Korea, they are working more towards the upper respiratory tract, respiratory infections. Influenza is their major problem. Influenza is not the problem for the third world countries. Third world country, the problem is gastrointestinal tract infections. We have a problem of typhoid, cholera, dysentery. That is our problem. So we have to basically focus, and I always say that we have to focus on that side. When we developed our feasibility, we also know that, okay, human capacity is also not available. Like we do not have trained biomanufacturing workforce in Africa. PAVM benchmark, and they said that, okay, they have only 3,000. Am I going out of time? So how much time we have? 5 minutes. Okay. I was thinking that we have basically saving some time so we can spend. Okay. What we did is we want to basically come into all the eco chains. We developed a KINA Foundation, which is a biomanufacturing training center. And today I am very pleased to say that, okay, we have students of KINA Foundation in this forum. Okay, there are students here which are basically learning. It is a 4-month training course, and after that completing, it's a after graduation you come to do that course, and with the course we are basically helping them, enabling them to get jobs in the biomanufacturing team. Our objective is very clear. We are here and we basically are completing the eco chain at formulation, fill and finish. The first products which are going to come in will be oral cholera vaccine, pneumococcal vaccine, and HPV vaccine. These are basically the initial products which are going to come in, and then the later products will be following. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Farhan. So we'll go over to Atlantic Life Sciences.
My name is Emmanuel Kweku-Hayford, and I'm the Quality Assurance and Regulatory Affairs Manager for Atlantic Life Sciences. Well, I also have a video to show, but because of time, I would see how best I can touch on salient areas and then we move on. Because DEK has done a very wonderful presentation with a video, and I thought it would have been in order for me to...
How long is the video?
But we are not here to rub shoulders.
3 minutes. You can show your video.
Then I think I'll show the video so that at least...
Yao doesn't have a video. 3 minutes.
I don't think it's as long as...
We are a little bit ahead of time, so 3 minutes.
So the video can roll now.
In the heart of Ningo Pram in the Greater
I choose
Accra
the video
region,
so that at least you have more pictorial.
is emerging. This is Atlantic Life Sciences Limited, one of the two companies behind Ghana's vaccine manufacturing initiative, where science, innovation, and determination is shaping the future of public health in Ghana. The facility, which sits on a 25-acre parcel of land, has received its first shipment of WHO-certified, already prepared anti-snake serum bulk supply, and production is currently underway in its vaccine production unit, processing the very first batch of trial vaccines for the certification of the Food and Drugs Authority. A serum and a vaccine are both important in healthcare delivery. Whereas vaccines are administered before the onset of a disease, a serum is given as an emergency or immediate treatment of a disease such as a snake bite. In conducting a team of regulatory officials led by the National Vaccine Institute around, we observed that the production of these products is highly controlled and monitored from start to finish.
This is the technology we are using for anti-snake serums. So we are having a technique of lyophilization also in place, and that is very rare. Lyophilizer with us. So you can see the quality of the product also. It should have moisture content less than 3%, and this was our first batch. We are having a moisture content only 1%. So it is well within limit.
Safety and quality assurance, according to the scientists, are paramount. According to them, the rigorous quality assurance protocols in place are to guarantee that every one of the products that comes out of the vaccine facility is safe and effective.
My duty is to make sure what you label as a label claim, the percentage you given as a label claim is actually what is there before it goes to the market.
Operating under the government's One District, One Factory, One D1F program, the $50 million project is hoping to introduce its first range of products onto the Ghanaian market, as well as for the West African region soon.
The trial batches for our national regulator has begun, and once they are complete with all the trial batches, everything will be forwarded onto the FDA for their testing and then approval.
Established this year by a Bill of Parliament, the National Vaccine Institute is mandated to coordinate and supervise research, development and manufacture vaccines in Ghana.
As part of our mandate is also to facilitate the research and development of academia and industry.
As Ghana forges ahead in her quest to be a known vaccine production hub, it comes along with hope, self-reliance and better healthcare for the entire continent.
It feels so good to be a Ghanaian at this time, knowing very well that Ghana has taken up this bold initiative to produce or manufacture her own vaccines for the well-being of her people and also for the rest of the continent. Reporting for GBC News, Gifty Ajay, Pram Pram, Greater Accra region.
So more importantly, I think after the research and development has taken place, there should be that outfit that would make it reach the doorstep of those individuals who have need for all the hard work that is coming from your cortex. And that is why Atlantic Life Sciences would be proudly Ghanaian and would be welcoming you into our fold for all the good works that you do.
We'll talk about that a little bit after, but I'll let Yamachi present. Yao doesn't have a video, but he talks longer than a video, so 5 minutes.
Our videos are on YouTube, so if you want to see Yamachi videos, please check out YouTube. We do have them, but I think in the interest of time, Yamachi has already been introduced by Eliza, who is a research scientist at Yamachi. We are slightly different from these two. We are a life science startup, a biotech startup, and so we are almost entirely focused on IP creation. Work at academic institutions like this is the beginning of IP creation, but you typically need an intermediate step, which is a commercial outfit that is focused on research, not yet industrialization, but developing academic ideas to the point where they can be fully realized as products. And so that's the role of biotech, companies like Yamachi. In our case, we are almost entirely focused on oncology. So non-communicable diseases are rapidly rising in our part of the world, and cancer is one of them. And so we think that there's an opportunity to really provide leadership in how cancer is treated and prevented across the African continent. So what we are trying to do at Yamachi is to diversify precision oncology globally by leveraging Africa's genetic diversity. Africa is the most genetically diverse continent, and yet we feature only 3% of global human genomic data. So most genomic data, human genome data available is from people of European ancestry. Almost 80% of it in publicly, or in fact not just publicly, but in generally available databases will be of people of European descent. African people represent only 3% of sequenced genomes. And most of these people would be African Americans who themselves are an admixed population. So given the diversity on the African continent, we believe there's an opportunity to really advance drug discovery in cancer by understanding cancers across Africa. So we're 3 years old. We're headquartered in Abilinkpe. I myself am a research fellow here at WACBIP and have since sort of begun a migration. So I have 1 foot at WACBIP and 1 foot, maybe 1.5 feet.
You have 1 toe here.
No, 1 toe. But what we are trying to do is build a viable entity as a commercial business that drives an understanding of cancer, but importantly does so through the creation of IP that can then be advanced through steps all the way towards a new drug. So we are looking really to identify targets, so drug targets that would be helpful in either diagnosing or treating cancer. And the goal is then to license that IP to pharma, who would then take it forward towards clinical trials, and ultimately into companies like DEK and Atlantic, who would then manufacture. And so we are part of that ecosystem. and an important one, I think, and one that is not very common in our part of the world, but one that is crucial to advancing research from purely academic enterprise towards translational products that would change people's lives. So we're currently 40 people. Yamachi is now 40 people strong.
I'll mention that we collaborate a lot also on another vaccine preventable cancer, which is HPV. And as Yao said, they fill or are trying to fill the gap in R&D and biotech. And I know that both Atlantic Life Sciences and DEK are more on the manufacturing side. But I think where we can build on our basic science research, which is why we showed the breadth that we did today, and go towards manufacturing, is to do more research and development in collaboration with companies such as yours. For instance, Farhan, you asked questions about, is it ready for the clinic? The National Vaccine Institute is supporting the creation of a sort of a slightly scaled up protein production facility. And I think, so I'd like your thoughts on how your individual companies can basically help to do some of that preclinical scale-up work, maybe in shared studentships. It's a good initiative, the Kina Foundation, but I think what directly impacts, what directions that have you seen, and how do you think you can more directly impact that and push it forward so that we are creating IP between ourselves and ultimately speeding up getting new vaccines to the market, something like what Anyway presented earlier on. So I'd like to switch it up a little bit. Okay. I'll let Hayford present, and then Farhan. Yeah.
Who, me?
No, Hayford.
You want me to pick up?
Yes.
Oh, yes, like I earlier indicated, but I did not quite get your question anyway. Because
so
like
we're looking at how can you directly sort of help us facilitate getting, directly or indirectly help us facilitate getting some of our candidates developed, maybe in the scale-up process, in preclinical to clinical.
Well, we have that arrangement, embedded in our business model, right? If you think of scaling up, then of course the point of commercialization also comes in, and that is where you are able to raise the necessary funds, even to support way for you to come to us, sit with us, and then discuss how we can be of that help to you, because you may be coming from an angle where we may not almost immediately see as viable, all right? But then rest assured, we have considered all of these silently and would listen to you. If we are convinced, why not? We can take it up together, and particularly for the fact that we are partnership oriented. When it comes to surviving in this industry, you cannot brush aside partnership. So it will be a welcome idea, and I'll be very quick to tell you that our doors are very much open for some of these discussions. Yeah.
Okay, Farhan.
Thank you very much. Basically, what happened is that Gavi and WHO has already identified the antigens which is necessary for Africa. So working under those antigens, we have seen that, okay, there are so many products which are available, which are in phase 2 and phase 3 and completion of phase 3, which are not localized in Africa. They are basically having, some of them have like Chinese product which have Chinese pharmacopoeial basically specification. So a compatibility study need to be done. So it's not necessary we go back and develop the lab level discussion, and we have a lab to lab tech transfer, and then toward lab to lab tech transfer, then lab to industry tech transfer. So we have to basically smartly think into, and then what we need to do is the readily available products, we have to localize in Africa before our R&D lab comes in, which is going to be ready in 2026. We can use Warbeck lab and Noguchi, where we can do a lab-to-lab tech transfer. Like we are in process of doing that one in one lab. So what happened is that there is a product HPV9 and HPV11. The product is in R&D phase. The problem with the product is that the specification which is used is Chinese specification. So we are bringing it in, we are going to give it to you, and so what you do is you will basically make the product available for us. When it is ready for us, it can be used. So it's a co-development.
Right.
So this is the best approach I think we have understood, and we are doing it in other countries also. Like we have started a R&D lab-to-lab tech transfer in another country. We are also evaluating. We have submitted Warbeck credentials to 1 or 2 countries, and then once it is finalized, we will be having it. In this way, we can jointly develop the product, and we have like a shared IP, and that shared IP will help Ghana to have its own product in maybe like 2030. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Farhan. Yeah, anything you want to add to this?
I mean, I think obviously we are slightly different, but I think the Heritage Project is a great example of collaboration between us and WACBIP. In this case, it was actually a project we initiated and then brought WACBIP on. It's a project that we got funded by the Gates Foundation. And so in our case, we are an R&D lab. So, the difference between us and an academic institution is probably smaller than the difference between us and a big industrialized commercialization partner. But I think the advantages we give is an ability to be nimble and agile, and to apply a certain amount of focus. Academic labs are involved in training, and so there's a certain pace you have to go when you depend on trainees. Yamachi doesn't depend on trainees, and so we can provide a certain acceleration that is required. In biotech, it's a race. You don't have 5 years to advance the way you would with a PhD project. You need monthly milestones and key performance indicators. So we do basic science. We do basic life science research, similar to what you have in academic labs, but our focus is much more target-oriented, and our timelines are compressed. So it means we don't spread ourselves too thin. We do a few things at a time. But I think the advantage of an academic lab partnering with us is once you get to a point where you think you have something that is potentially commercializable, it's not yet ready to take to a DEK or to an Atlantic. You need to do more work on it and potentially even advance the R&D further. That is where biotech labs come out. We see this in Europe and North America, where labs spin out biotech companies. A professor may develop something, get to a certain point, decide, I don't want to stay in the university anymore, I need to spin out a company because that's how I'll advance it. They take the same research, but now they put laser focus on that, hire a few really talented scientists to advance it, and then things move much quicker. So that is the role of a biotech startup. I think Heritage is an interesting project where we are collaborating with WACBIP, taking advantage of the capacity on both sides. And I think the project will be further along than it would be if either of us worked alone. So I think Yamachi will hopefully not be the only biotech. I mean, there are a few others that are trying to start up in Ghana now. There need to be more. The students in the room should take inspiration from this, and maybe even the faculty, that we need a stable of cutting-edge life science companies. It is not easy, and securing the startup capital is extremely challenging. And some of us are still in that journey. But I think having enough of a base of biotech startups will be crucial to the ecosystem. We cannot just have, the industry partners who are going to mass produce these need an influx of IP that would drive them forward. Currently, they are depending on outsourced IP from China and other places. So ultimately, they advance what we can do in Ghana, but it's still not ours. Their job is not necessarily to develop all the IP. They need us to develop the IP so they have something to manufacture. And so till we can create that bridge, we will always be dependent on IP externally. And I think that is the challenge to those of us who are scientists, is to think beyond the publication, think beyond that Nature paper that you are dreaming about, and identify IP that you can protect, and then develop further.
Okay. So that was related to the question, as in, I think we can develop that IP, but I'm wondering what role, you've obviously mentioned your role, and Farhan, particularly maybe Atlantic Life Sciences. Do you think you can help in co-developing that IP? Because there's only so far we can take it in basic science right now, in terms of getting to the point where you need more money to scale up. And then I'm going to open it up to the audience for everyone to ask questions. 2 or 3 pharma and biotech reps, as in what do you think they can help to bring your ideas to the market or closer to the market, in terms of not necessarily something commercializable, but that's something that is considered novel IP. So.
Yes, I think one of the things we need to understand from industry is that it is also there to help the academia. As we speak right now, we have a state-of-the-art 120-seater conference room, and it was built with students in mind. And so helping to further develop IPs here and there and all that, there is room for that also. And currently we have brought in experts. And what I mean is that people with that industry exposure when it comes to vaccine manufacturing and Sarah in particular. Because at the moment we have one such doctor with us who is there to steer the affairs of, formulations here and there. And the last time I had interactions with him, you could tell that this man is very, very rich. I mean, the knowledge base of this man is very, very rich. And so if you are such a student who is looking forward to understanding anything more apart from what you do, when you come to Atlantic Life Sciences, there are such people who would help or shepherd those thoughts to the right, destination.
Okay, thank you very much. So, any questions, comments from the audience, particularly? Okay, Philip in the back, and then Dr. Charles and Reverend.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, we are trying to do academics. We are doing research in the lab. I wanted to ask what place you have in the 3 different companies for sponsoring students, for instance. I guess I'm coming to direct, and maybe this might not be the right forum to discuss that, but can you sponsor PhD students, co-sponsor PhD students to do research and possibly come up with IPs? I know AstraZeneca, I have friends who their PhD is completely funded by big pharma like AstraZeneca and some other big companies. So do you have a place like that? Can you sponsor 5 WACP PhD students? Hey. 10, 20 if possible. Thank you.
I'll start first because I'm the smallest. So the reason I started Yamachi is exactly that, right? AstraZeneca didn't start off as a giant company, right? AstraZeneca started off small. Roche started off small. The best example is Novo Nordisk. Novo Nordisk is currently one of the most valuable pharma companies in the world. It's about $500 billion. I think it's second only to Eli Lilly. Novo Nordisk alone contributed 30% to Denmark's GDP last year. And it's because of their new drug, Ozempic, which is the metabolism drug that all the celebrities in America are taking to lose weight. But the point I'm trying to make is, this is what Africa needs to do. Your question is sort of the end of the process. So you're asking for companies to sponsor PhDs. In order for companies to sponsor those PhDs, they need money, right? And the way they generate money is by generating products and revenue by commercializing science. So till we commercialize science, we will always be dependent on support from foundations and others that support WAGWIP was established through World Bank and Wellcome and all those resources. So your question is a good one, but your question is a question actually that should go to, I would argue, should go to leaders of our countries in Africa, that why don't we have an AstraZeneca? I just came from ASCO, which is a 40,000 person conference in Chicago for oncology. And I tweeted about, those who follow me on Twitter know I tweeted about it. There was not a single African company there. All the top pharma companies in the world. I mean, Yamachi was there, but I won't count us as, worthy enough to call. Everybody was exhibiting. They had stands bigger than this room. You see Eli Lilly. They were giving out cookies, food. They had fancy coffee. There were trillions of dollars represented in IP in that room. And I couldn't find, at least to my view, a single company. Japan was represented by 6 or 7 companies. Japan is a small country. The continent of Africa was not represented, right? So I hope, right now, Yamachi doesn't have money to sponsor a PhD, right? We do internships for masters, so we started doing something. I hope that in time, yes, I'll be able to sponsor 20 PhD students. Why not, right? I mean, that's why Prof let me do it, right? Prof, and I know he will come to me. The moment a big announcement comes, Prof will come and say, so yeah, those people have more of these initiatives to provide the resources to support PhDs. So it's a good question, but it's about when do you do that, and why haven't we done it up to this point?
I want to add something here. See, what happened is that this is basically the gap which was there. We cannot wait up to the companies to become so big when we start supporting the students. So that is why we went to GIZ and asked them that, okay, we need the biomanufacturing force now. So GIZ, thank you very much. They have supported us. They have fully funded the project, which is Kina Foundation. Students are sitting down here among you. They are now completing the biomanufacturing training in the 4th month training. They started from March and they are completing in June. They will be now adjusted in the biomanufacturing force of the Africa. Africa needs 9,000 full-time employees. So this is basically you people. One way is directly sponsoring few of the PhDs, and the other way is sponsoring graduates so that they can come and be. So we have already started it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I believe, Reverend, you had a question? And then Charles.
So my question probably it will be to all of you, but kind of general. Now I'm just wondering, now that you are developing or manufacturing these vaccines, Yamachi, of course, specifically is more focused on cancer. So aside vegetarians, many of us, of course, feed on animals, and I'm just wondering, with the vaccines you are producing, I'm sure they cut across, I just hope, and could be used for veterinary purposes. Because of the quantities you are anticipating to produce, just asking whether they are of use also for vets.
I think I can answer that. Usually there's different companies that will make veterinary products and human products. So because of the different levels in safety and things like that, I mean, they could have done it different lines for those, but I don't think...
It is not possible like to produce in the same even premises the veterinary vaccines and the human vaccines. It is not possible. So you have to build up a separate factory, completely dedicated factory for the vaccines for the human and dedicated factories for the vaccines for the... Even in the humans, you cannot produce BCG, which is a tuberculosis vaccine, in the same factory. You have to... Dedication is important there.
Yeah. So for vets, I think already there's some veterinary vaccine production in Ghana. Is it VSD? So Charles, you had a question.
Yes, I just wanted to, I think before we're talking about
building the academic, industry bridge, but in a way too, if you look at a lot of the, clinical trials that are really happening, most of these are taken out of Africa because we don't have the strong regulatory works, or probably also, if you think about it, more of the health sector. So we don't have strong system in our hospitals, in our clinics and stuff that can hold some of these clinical trials. It's really, really important. I think probably some of the research institutions, like I probably might commend Noguchi for that, for starting some of these ISO certifications, which is really going on. But how are we bringing our hospitals, our health sectors along in terms of building strong systems to really support this clinical trial? Because that's where the money will come from. If you don't have the strong hospitals with the right system to really hold the clinical trials, we're not going to get them.
Yeah.
Can I take it? Question?
Okay.
See, what happened is, if you talk about the clinical trial and setup of the clinical trial, a clinical trial need a project manager, project management, then overall they need a site manager, site enrollment, clinical researchers. So overall you see that we need basically
This is the last comment.
clinical trial, CROs are important. Here in Ghana, basically we have a setup of clinical trial under the R&D department of Ghana Health Services. We have 4 clinical trial centers. Kintapo is one of the clinical trial centers. So if the clinical trial comes from outside, it can be performed. But initiating a clinical trial in Ghana, we are trying to work out a CRO, so that once we have worked out a CRO, then it will be possible. So right now what happened is that the clinical trial is happening in Ghana for a very long time. Ghana is always participating, but the main researcher or the main lead clinical trial person is outside. So here we have only regional clinical trial coordinator. So that is what we are. Here is a lady, I think, sitting down here, whose name is Clara, and she is our basically clinical trial coordinator. We have already appointed, and we are working with it. Thank you.
So, well, Farhana said it, but it's not correct that we have a weak clinical trial. We have a very strong clinical trial infrastructure. We have a strong regulator. The FDA has been regulating clinical trials in Ghana. And as he said, the Ghana Health Service actually has, various clinical trials in different health research centers in Ghana. We just did a COVID-19 effectiveness study with Kintampo. So we don't hear much about the clinical trials, and so that's something that the Vaccine Institute is taking as a key activity, working together with the Ghana Health Service and the FDA to strengthen the clinical trials infrastructure in Ghana, not just for vaccines, but of course the FDA looks at drugs and new investigational products. There's actually even a traditional medicines directorate, that looks at, herbal products, etc. So sometimes we, the academics, we think that because we're not involved in certain activities, it means that it's not that strong. But we probably, that's another aspect that we need to do. We need to make the information available so that people know the strength of our local system and our ability to move things forward. In fact, one thing that we're going to be doing together with WHO is to come out with what we call preferred product profiles for vaccines that we will be developing in Ghana based on the international WHO, recommendations for preferred product profiles for vaccines. So these are things that are ongoing. So your question is good in the way that, yes, there is some work ongoing, and we need to highlight, that, and also make those sources of information available so that people know what is going on. It's not every clinic and hospital that can do a clinical trial, by the way. So, clinical trials are specialized things, and if you go to KNUST, they have a certain center that are set up and have been doing some clinical trials, even in the Asante Akim area and Agogo Hospital and other centers for some time. So just to show that there is a strong clinical trial infrastructure in Ghana. Peter, can we wrap up? It's 1 o'clock.
Yes. So we are exactly at 1 o'clock. I'd like to also recognize the presence of the country technical lead for the RISA Fund, Gameli, who's sitting in the middle there, and also Dr. Amu from CSIR, and a representative of the Armed Forces Health Directorate, sitting just in front of Dr. Amo. And if I didn't call your name, all the deans, directors, you are recognized. And I'll call on the chair for his closing remarks. Thank you very much to our panelists.
Thank you. So it's been a very wonderful morning. I think we've talked a lot about research. I have my colleagues from the Vaccine Institute at the back there somewhere. Where are you? Vaccine Institute. Are you the only one? In front too. Yes. I asked them to come because when I talk about R&D, sometimes the auditor will ask me, Prof, are you sure that you are using the money well? And then when I asked the chief accountant to sign a check, she wants to know exactly where the money is going. So I asked them to come to, please sit down. I asked them to come to this so they understand, what the end product is going to be. When I say I'm supporting WACBIC, if I want to give some PhD or some master's students some allowance, they understand where we are trying to go. And then as for DEK and Atlantic Sciences, you've seen the videos you heard, so you know exactly what they're about. So we had a wonderful time. I'd like to thank GIZ for supporting us, and Professor Wandari and WACBIC, for allowing us to work together with you so that we can actually make vaccines in Ghana. So from the MVI, thank you so much.
All right. So I think it's been a fantastic day. Wouldn't you agree? I think next time we'll make it a full day. Yeah? But once again, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us. I want to specifically thank our friends from GIZ and the National Vaccine Institute for leading this initiative to have this program. We hope that this is the first in a series. We should be doing it every other month or something like that, and keeping abreast with what each of us is doing, because we need to work together to move the country forward in terms of our scientific independence. Now we have industry, as we've seen, from biotech to manufacturing. Like Yao mentioned, we have that deficit, that gap in the biotech capacity, which is needed to take the knowledge that we generate here in the academic institutions and translate that to a product that can be manufactured. So working with the Vaccine Institute and our partners, we hope that we'll be able to close that gap and allow the full potential of vaccine development in Ghana to be unleashed. There are so many excellent ideas that have been generated in the academic institutions. And if we can have that capacity to move those forward, it will be very exciting. We all know that it's not every vaccine candidate that would be successful. Indeed, less than 5% of them would be successful. But if you don't try, you wouldn't know, right? You have to try and see which ones would work. And we need to have the system for doing that. And once we hit, it'll pay for itself, right? If you get one vaccine, it'll pay for all the PhDs that we've been paying for, yeah? So let's all recommit ourselves and continue to carry forward with the passion that we've all shown. And I'm very confident that vaccines will be coming from Ghana very soon. So I thank you all for your time. We are happy that you visited us. Please, if you've never been to WACBIP, you can walk around and look at the labs and meet our students and faculty and staff who are in the building. And welcome back anytime. Thank you very much.
So we are done. If the lunch for, as before, for the invited guests will be on the first floor, and for everyone else on the second floor. Yes.